So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome again, welcome back, or welcome to all those who are new in this room. If you are unsure, this is the room where we will talk about Greece. Again, one of many discussions over the last years. My name is Nico Lange. I'm the Deputy Director for Political Consulting at Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung in Berlin. First of all, I'd like to thank the Karamanlis Institute for Democracy for bringing this panel together and for having me as a German, as a moderator to this panel. The panel is referring to the Odyssey. If I'm very well informed, or what I know from school is that it took Odysseus 10 years to return home to Ithaca. It feels to me like 10 years already that we are talking about the problems Greece is having. It's not 10 years yet. I'm not responsible for the title, but it was well put as...
We're at the stage of the Iliad, not the Odyssey.
Ah, okay.
Right?
Okay, I knew that my knowledge of the Odyssey and of Odysseus can be improved. I did not put the title "Why Greece Cannot Get Its Act Together," but I can tell you from a Berlin perspective, it's a question that many people are having. And I'm interested in hearing the discussion, and we will proceed in a way that we will have now like 8-10 minutes for the keynote and 5 minutes from the discussants, and then open up the floor for everybody who wants to take part in this. And to make this a little bit spicy in the beginning, when I came here, I had a discussion about Greece with somebody in Berlin. And he said to me, well, it was referring to the asylum situation and the situation of refugee camps in Greece and the closing of the border. He said to me, look, now we are finally in this situation where Greece cannot make itself comfortable anymore within the crisis. And this, of course, was a very unfair statement, but I brought it up in the beginning in connection with the question, when will Greece get its act together? What is needed to get this act together? I'm happy we can discuss these questions with distinguished speakers. First of all, Manolis KEFALOGIANNIS.
Yes, you pronounced perfectly.
Who is well known to many of you because he is the head of the Greek delegation to the European Parliament, member of the European Parliament, and he is the head of the Greek delegation to the European People's Party. We have with us Christos, who is a former Minister of Development, also has been serving as a member of the European Parliament and is now in business.
I've always been in business. Politics was an interval.
From a German point of view, many things could be said in reaction to this, but I will not do this. But of course, we will be interested to hear what the situation is for business in Greece, because on the other panel we had on political and economic reforms of the European Union, there were strong points made that in the end, growth and sustainable development is only possible if the environment is right for business and for investment. And we have with us Michael, that's the most tough pronunciation, Michael ARGHYROU.
Yes, very good.
Who is at the moment working at Cardiff Business School, dealing with economics. And he is also a member of the academic council of our partner here, the Karamanlis Institute. Okay, let's start this off now with the kickoff by Manolis KEFALOGIANNIS. Tell us, please, why is Greece unable to get its act together? Please.
Thank you very much. Dear friends, dear colleagues, first of all, I would like to thank Martens Center for European Studies, and Karamanlis Institute of Democracy, for an invitation in an update subject, which is an economic odyssey, why Greece cannot get its act together. Greece really is under stress. A real economic odyssey, for sure. Greece needs radical changes in the political system, in the economic system, in the civil service, in the justice system. We can name it the passage from the third to the fourth Greek democracy. This is exactly the case that General de Gaulle did in the late 50s and early 60s. At that time, with the referendum made the passage from the fourth to the fifth French Republic. In the period of crisis, people who are really writing history are them who are changing the fundamentals of the system. This was exactly what happened in Greece in the past. We did it with the founder of Greek state, which is Ioannis Kapodistrias, then with Halilos, Trikoupis, Eleftherios Venizelos, Konstantinos, Karamanlis, the name of the issue, the founder of our party. What we live today, actually we live a disaster. If you go back in history and see what happened in Paris Reparation Committee back in 1974, it was a big congress at that time trying to see the disaster of Europe after World War II. So they calculated that the disaster for Greece, because of the World War II and the Civil War, it was equal to the creation of GDP of 175% of the GDP. Unfortunately, in simple terms, not for the economists, that means that Greeks had to work for 1.5 years without spending anything and without doing anything, just to pay for the disaster. At present, we have a debt of 200% of GDP. And because of the bail-in situation, and the 100 billion euros have been crossed out from the Greek debt, we have 175, exactly the same situation as we were after World War II. But Greece was all the time like this? No. Greece was, let's say, a country who made important steps in the past. For instance, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, it was far ahead in the development than every country of OECD. We had an average increase of GDP in the 50s, which was 8.2% average for a decade. In the 60s, we have 60.2%. In the 70s, we have 4.5% in the whole decade, with two economic crises, the oil crisis. And that was the reason that the founders of the European Union decided at that time for Greece to be the 10th member, first from all the countries, all the states of the South, 5 years earlier than Spain and Portugal. So what was the reason of coming in such a situation? It was populism. It's populism, it's a battle we have to win in Greece, it's a battle we have to win in Europe as a whole, because we don't have populism only in Greece, which is the radical leftist party who is ruling the country now. But we have populists all over Europe. We have Grillo in Italy, we have Podemos in Spain, we have Farage in England, in the referendum now, we have Le Pen in France, we have the Eurosceptics in the northern part of Europe. We have all these people who really put in danger the whole idea of European Union, which gave us as a gift 70 years of peace, and for us of the southern part of Europe, 40 years of good democracy for Greece, Spain, and Portugal. So populism is a problem. When we joined European Union, we had a deficit of 26% of GDP. Now we have 175. So Greece knows the way to get out of the crisis. Of course, we need the support of the European Union. Of course, we need the support of other member states. We have some support. But first of all, we have to do what we have to do ourselves. And these are the evaluation who has to be completed, and changes and reforms in all levels where necessary. The measures have to be implemented immediately. The situation in Greece is not really good. We face this crisis from the world crisis of 2008. The result for Greece and the Greek people is really difficult. We have 6 years of recession. We have unemployment which is rising. We have significant drop of income, more than 40 to 60% in some cases. We have poverty and inequality which is rising. And all this make a really difficult, let's say, case for living for Greeks. On the top of that, we had the way that the European Union addressed the other big issue, which is the refugee issue. We failed. As Europeans, we failed. We cannot accommodate 1 million of refugees when countries like Lebanon have 1.2 million of refugees, Jordania 1.8 million of refugees, and Turkey 2.5 million, even 3 million of refugees. So for the corner of Europe, which is the eastern part of Europe, to address the refugee issue as well as the economic problem is really a difficult exercise to be solved. So we need solidarity, we need a bailout deal with our creditors before mid-May, and we need a bailout fund to pay our debts. But this are the introduction. We have very important speakers here, two excellent speakers who have really a lot of information for President Greece to address to us. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. KEFALOGIANNIS. I must admit I have 1 or 2 questions already myself, but I will keep them. I will keep them for the discussion. Let's bring the others in first and then open it up. Christos, FOLIAS. Now, I already posed a question in the beginning. Especially interesting to me, and I hope to the audience as well, would be to discuss the question how Greece can get its act together from the perspective of Greek business and the environment for business in Greece, because it will not be labor and wealth will not be created by us, not by the European institutions. It has to be done by business. So please, the floor is yours.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ. Καλημέρα. I will not speak in Greek because it will be a disservice to a lot of the people here. I thank you very much for being with us today, and I thank the Martin Center for giving us the opportunity to discuss about history today and tomorrow. I mentioned Iliad because it took 10 years of war in Troy to start, for Odysseus to start his Odyssey, which took another 10 years. I hope we are in the Iliad, not in the Odyssey, because after 10 years we won in Troy. So I hope we win as well this battle, which as a matter of fact I have to admit that it is a battle within Greece. It's not a battle against others who want to impose bad measures on Greece, and we have to be candid, frank, and straightforward with that. Greece is in a crisis. To start with, I will tell you that I was never afraid of financial crisis. I was never afraid of bankruptcy, because in business and economy, there are cycles. So you go up, you go down. Then you can go up again, and then you might go down again. This is history of economy, both for countries, for families, for companies, for small businesses. We've seen it and we see it every day. The problem is when we have a crisis in ethics, when we have a crisis in politics, and when we have a crisis in institutions. And this is the big crisis. Because this kind of crisis for me is like the cardiogram of a dead man. It's flat, it's not round. You cannot escape from that. In order to avoid to get out of the crisis, the only way is business, the only way is the economy, the only way is in the marketplace, in its wider sense of it. When there is a crisis, there are opportunities. And we have to look at this crisis as a source of opportunities that we can invest upon to have a better future. In order, however, to get all those opportunities, we have to finally touch the bottom of the problem, of the situation. You know, when you reach the bottom, then you can push up and fly out. If you don't, it's like trying to push on the water. You cannot find anything to step upon. So, we have to realize in Greece, and when I say we, government, political parties, businesses, and population, and people, that unless business goes well, nothing can go well. The heart of a country, of a society, of an economy is in the marketplace. The blood and oxygen comes from the marketplace. And in order to have a marketplace functioning, first of all, you need good psychology. The psychology in Greece now is as bad as can be. I hope it doesn't get worse. You walk in the main streets of Athens, of Thessaloniki, of smaller cities, and you see more closed shops than open shops. You walk around, and it's the first time you see decent people standing on the corners asking for support of passers-by, not to buy a necktie, to buy medicines for their heart or for whatever. This is something we haven't seen before. And this is a result of the crisis. Now, why we have a crisis? Because we did not take the measures we should have taken, because we thought that we can cook omelette without breaking eggs. Allow me to say, to be critical to politics, I've been a minister myself, so I accept the share of responsibility that goes to me. There is the tendency for the politicians, when they have to decide something, they look at this, they say, oh, there is political cost here, 20, it's written. Political cost, we don't decide on that, we don't do that. The mistake is that they do not turn the coin around to see what is a political profit. If the cost is 20 and the profit is 5, it's stupid to do it. If the cost is 20 and the profit is 100, then it's stupid not to do it. Unfortunately, when there is a political cost, we stop there, we don't turn the coin around to see what is a profit. So what they are doing now is they're trying to fix the problem by squeezing taxes and incomes out of people who cannot afford either to pay more or to live with less. This government are trying to be good to their clientele, which is the public sector, which is a very big public sector that produces nothing. They're trying to have them happy by increasing their salaries today. Believe you me, they are increasing their salaries. The moment they are decreasing the pensions, the moment they are increasing taxation. We're reading these days that they're preparing to increase taxation on incomes, on profits, on cigarettes, on alcohol, on cable TV, on mobile telephony, electricity, water, you name it. The VAT on most consumables used to be 5 years ago 8%. Now it is 23 and will become 24. What goes to the state as direct taxation as well as indirect taxation is 2/3 of the income of somebody who's working. the income of an employee, if it is 30 euros, 20 of them go to the state, 10 of them go to his pocket. You cannot go on like this. There is this big problem that the mentality of this government is that they think that by having a smaller cake, they can get a bigger piece. This has only been once by Jesus Christ, who fed so many people with 2 blocks of bread. We cannot do that anymore. That's why he's God and we are short of gods nowadays. We have to realize that we have to support entrepreneurship. First of all, we have to believe that profit is not the devil, like many of us believe in Greece. And I'm not only referring to the left part of society, I'm also referring to the rest of the society. Because, you know, even the new democracy, some new democracy people, even some right of the center people, we are deep inside communists. We hate the ones who are successful. We don't like the ones who make money, as if this money is not distributed in the society in the form of salaries, investments, taxes, social security, consumption, therefore a better future. I don't want to take more time. I'm just giving you an idea of what is the situation in Greece today. We'll have the opportunity, I'm sure, to discuss, having your questions to put ahead. But one thing that we have to make very clear, private economy has to be facilitated, bureaucracy has to die today, yesterday, taxation has to become stable and low, incentives should be given for new investments, but the most important thing is to have credibility and consistency. That's for the time being. I'm at your disposal for the rest of the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this. Michael, as an economist.
But no question for this.
I have questions, but no. I have put them down. But I want to bring Michael in first, then I will ask my questions to all of you. Michael, as an economist looking to Greece from the outside, from Cardiff, is it true, as it was formulated in the text describing this panel, that Greece cannot get its act together? Or are there also signs of hope? Maybe you can elaborate on this a little bit.
Well, of course, Greece can get its act together, but so far it has been not very successful. And why? I think that the short answer is that so far there has been a lack of a critical mass of support towards necessary changes, towards necessary reforms, and this critical mass of support has been lacking, at least until recently, both in the political system, particularly at the left of the center, but also within the Greek society. Now, to some extent, this is understandable. The crisis hit a very fragile economy. The crisis makes things difficult. Reforms have losers, and these losers lose immediately. Wins come later on. So it is difficult to pass reforms anyway. It is even more difficult to pass reforms within the period of a crisis. It is even more difficult when the political system does not provide the leadership. But there is a silver lining now, and what is the silver lining? That over the last year and a half, illusions have been exposed. Until last year, we had some kind of belief to a large proportion of the Greek population that things could go back. It was just a question of standing up to external creditors. This has been exposed as a fallacy. And the second sign of hope is that reflexes are now activated. And you can see this in the way through which, for example, New Democracy recovered from a series of electoral defeats. The party did not go to bits, as a lot of people expected. Basically, it reorganized, it elected a new leader, and crucially, this new leader has been elected through a mass process. 400,000 Greek citizens went, participated. They showed that they care about the country and they believe that things can change. So things can change, and the question is how they will change. And now I will speak as an economist. Well, there are two stylized facts, and they define the immediate problems. They define what we call in economics the policy objectives. What are these problems? Number one, Greece has what is called in economics a negative output gap. This means that we now produce less than what we could. The difference is approximately 7%. This is called in economics macroeconomic stabilization. So the first priority is to get the economy back to its potential. The second problem is that this potential is not satisfactory. Greece, even if it goes to its potential GDP, it will still be approximately 1/3 below the EMU average. So this is the long-term objective of changing the growth model. So these two things define the policy objectives, and then the question is how you meet these policy objectives of stabilization and growth. And here you have to meet what we call in economics intermediate targets, starting from stabilization. Stabilization has to do with demand management. Of course, we don't have monetary policy because we're in the euro and we should stay there. So stabilization can either come through the restoration of normality in the banking system, so you need to have higher credit growth. And also, it is very important to have a restoration of confidence. At the moment, as we speak, confidence in Greece is very low, as you can see from a series of confidence indexes, like, for example, sentiment indexes, or the spread, or private deposits, or industrial production. So these are two key areas for short-term stabilization. Get liquidity right in the banking system, get confidence going. And how do you do that? Well, you don't control this 100%, but you can certainly do things towards this direction. Liquidity, which is number one problem, has to do with three things. A, resolution of non-performing loans, to which we have been very delayed. I don't know why. Second thing is that we have to get a much faster and efficient judicial system, because now any sort of legal difference can take up to approximately 6 years. So banks cannot lend if in case of a difference they will have to wait 6 years for a resolution. And number three, we have to get right the bankruptcy law. These are three key things that have to be done immediately, and they will improve the liquidity situation. When it comes to confidence, priority number one, you stop fighting with the creditors. We are all on the same boat. Nobody wants Greece to continue going down the hill. So we know this from economic literature. Markets give you a much more favorable space to move when you are in a process of debt restructuring, when you cooperate with your creditors. So these are two key things that we have to do immediately. And then when you go to the growth model, which is, of course, a much more long-term business enterprise, but eventually this is the key thing, you need three things. The first thing that you need to do is to increase long-term employment, the capacity of the economy to create jobs. At the moment, the capacity of the Greek economy to create jobs is not satisfactory. The second thing that you need to do is that you have to increase the productivity of the increased jobs. Not only have more people in work, but to produce more. And the third thing is that the Greek production, which will come from more Greek workers and more productive workers, will have to be more competitively priced. So increase the long-term employment, increase productivity, increase competitiveness. Now, these things require A, opening up markets, B, attract new investment, and C, they imply a shift, a rebalancing of the economy from the non-traded sector to the traded sector. Now, there are a set of milestones that have to be met in order to achieve these targets. We will not go through each of them now. But the key idea here is that Greece needs to become more friendly to enterprise. And this requires change of attitudes. This requires for the average Greek to understand that the present growth model has reached its limits, and to a large extent rediscover Greek traditions. You know, Greece is a very entrepreneurial nation. From ancient times to modern times, if you go, for example, to places like the United States, where you have research which show what sort of professions different ethnic background choose, Greeks are among the most entrepreneurial people, you know. So it is time to go back to Greek society and tell them it's not bad to make money as long as you pay your taxes and as long as you are consistent with laws. It is perfectly all right to be rich. By being rich, you provide jobs to other people as well, because either you will have a business of your own or you are going to spend money and this money will finance somebody else's income. Achieve attitudes change, that is key. And I am quite hopeful that now, because we have gone through this very painful experience, the conditions are right, and I very much look forward towards that. A last remark about Greek restructuring of debt, because there is a lot of talk. Very briefly, debt is not the #1 problem of the Greek economy. The #1 problem of the Greek economy is the fact that the economy does not produce enough. Having said that, debt restructuring, as long as a credible growth policy is in place, will be very helpful for Greece. It's not that Greece could not repay its existing debt. It could, because the state lives forever. It is an infinite entity. The debt is a finite number, so theoretically, somebody who lives forever can pay any finite amount of money. The problem is that because the Greek debt is so big, even if we do in Greece everything that we should do, anything that happens outside Greece can put the Greek debt back into a non-sustainable path. Therefore, as long as you have this very high debt stock, risk premium will remain high. This will hinder external investment. This will constrain economic activity. So I think that in the question of debt, we have to find a sort of closed contract whereby Greece undertakes to deliver measurable reforms, and in return, after these reforms have been implemented, there is automatic debt reduction. This is going to address the concerns of both parties, because you see now, if you're Germany or creditor country, you say, why should I give debt relief? If I give them debt relief, they will have fiscal space, they will do the same kind of policies as before. On the other hand, if you are a Greek government, you say, if I do all these reforms and my debt goes back to sustainability, they will tell me, why do you need debt relief? You see, you're doing very well. So there is a coordination problem here. None of the two parties wants to move.
Thank you so far. On the last point you mentioned, we just had in the other room the discussion this morning on economic and political reforms of the European Union. I think it's possible, maybe even easy, for many in our political family to agree that more fiscal and economic government in the Eurozone is needed. But even within our center-right political family, I am under the impression that if it comes to making it concrete what it means, we have very, very various opinions on the content of economic government. And I'm not sure if we, within the EPP family, even have a space where we can discuss the differences and find a common line if it comes to creating what you just said, and is very much needed. This is maybe a task to follow up for the network of center-right think tanks.
Always have in mind the Roman Empire, the collapse of the Roman Empire, and the dinosaurs. They didn't evolve, they disappeared.
Michael,
this will not be the case with European.
Michael will bring us to a more. Michael will bring us again on a more positive note, answering the questions.
Yes, indeed. Actually, that's exactly what I intend to do in relation to your question. Does the country have the energy? You see, take the last century. So let's get some perspective here. Take Greece 1923. Greece has just lost a major war against Turkey. 1.5 million Greeks of minor Russia come to Greece. This is at the footsteps of a disastrous war in 1897, 2 Balkan wars, and the First World War. So we are talking about a society in 1923 that went, in the space of 30 years, through 4 major wars. And the last war was a disastrous defeat. What did the country do? It responded magnificently to the challenge. It incorporated 1.5 million people in the country in a very peaceful manner. And the country, during the period after 1923, actually grew and was stabilized. Go to 1950. just after the Second World War, devastation, and on top of that, a very divisive civil war. 1950 onwards, Greece was the most fast-growing country in Europe. Go to 1974, 7 years of dictatorship, another war in Cyprus. Still, the country went through a peaceful mean in democratic policies and joined the European Union, and the period of prosperity followed. So what I'm trying to tell you is that compared to the present situation, over the last 100 years, on 3 occasions, Greece faced much more challenging circumstances, and the rebound was very good. So I have no doubt that Greece will recover. But of course, in order to recover, it will not happen on its own. We need to have a proper plan. We need to communicate to people that things cannot go on as they used to. We need to put in place the changes, the reforms, pass to society that this is not a contest between ourselves. Everybody, firms, households, government are on the same boat. And one important key ingredient of the plan is that those who will be affected negatively by the reforms should not be left behind. They have somehow to be not exactly compensated, but not left as a social underclass. Here I have in mind the British experience. Mrs. Thatcher did an excellent job in terms of reforming the British economy. One thing she got wrong was that she did not take care of the losers of her reforms. And this is something that has left in Britain a legacy, a social legacy, which we see even today in Britain. This is something that will facilitate reforms if the losers are somehow compensated, and it will not leave this long-term legacy which creates social divisions. And that will make Greece South Korea, as you were saying, because you have the evidence from other environments in which a lot of Greeks participate, and they are doing pretty well. But you need, what Mr. FOLIAS were saying, a new regime, but this new regime will not happen on its own. Again, you have to put in place an infrastructure of public signals. Everybody has to get the message that here things are done in another way. And again, anecdotal evidence shows that the Greeks will respond. I remember very well the period of Olympic Games in Greece 2004. In Greece, we don't have the concept of bus lanes. They are basically decorative. But during the Olympic Games, because there was a big campaign and because people were told, don't use the bus lanes, and everybody knew that nobody else would use the bus lanes, nobody actually did use the bus lanes. So if you have a public signal which is believed, then everybody adjusts very quickly to the new regime. Mm-hmm. So if we put in place public signals which are credible and signal a change of regime, I'm sure that a lot of people will follow. The brain drain, yes, 200,000 people went out. They are very specialized, very, very high quality human capital. They did very well, because if they had stayed to be unemployed, they would have depreciated their human capital. In the meantime, they continue to develop personally. They continue to earn money. They continue to go back to Greece to spend some money. I see, obviously, it is difficult for people to leave their families, but you know, since when Greeks were afraid of immigrating? This is what we have been doing from ancient history. Actually, it's good for Greek diaspora as well, you know. Greece is a small country, it needs to have a strong diaspora. Greeks abroad are an asset. So I can see the cost, there is a benefit. And for the time being, this is the situation.
Please do.
So, 2 remarks. I totally agree with what Michalis said. But we always should take something into account. Mm-hmm. After the minor Assyrian refugees, we had the disaster, and then we had the recovery.
Yes.
After World War II, we had the Civil War.
Yeah.
Before 1975, 1974, we had seven years of dictatorship. Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you that the message for Greece is positive for future. What worries me is until we go to the bottom mm-hmm. to face another disaster. And what we're discussing now here, and what we have to discuss in Greece, is how we can avoid the disaster and pay the minimum price out of our own mistakes and the problems we faced, and we came in this situation. This is for food for thought.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I know that policy making is about making tough decisions. The tough decision I have to make now is either to open for another round and run deeply into lunchtime, or to wrap this up and have you ask your questions to the panelists during lunchtime. I will opt for the second option, but before I do that, let's play on the panel here to wrap this up. Let's play a little game. The game goes like this. I will start a phrase and you will finish it. Like, when this panel is over, we will have lunch. Let's start with you, Michael.
Oh, okay.
Let's start with you, Michael. And I start with saying, Wolfgang Schäuble must understand that
he's right on some things, he's not so right on others.
Alexis Tsipras' next step should be
Out.
And for you, Jean-Claude Juncker must
stay in place. It's beautiful.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being us, and have a nice lunch.